Friends, welcome back. We are joined. This is interview number 10 with HG Tudor, but I'm going to pretend that people are new or they don't know the previous 9 interviews because this is a bit of a special. We're going to do a 3-part series on cults. And what caused me and HG to kind of hook up in the first place is that I, couldn't help but notice that what he was talking about, being in an abusive relationship with a narcissist, was exactly what I experienced in a cult. So over 3 parts, we're going to delineate my experience from when I first got seduced into it. Part 1 here is called How I Got Seduced into a Cult or Scientology. Part 2 is the enmeshment. And part 3 is the escape/recovery process. Now, I'm going to explain my experience, and HG is going to jump in whenever he feels like it. And he's going to break down exactly what's happening. And I'm probably going to learn a lot myself because even though we've been over this territory before in previous interviews, I think this is going to be a fascinating case study using myself as a guinea pig. HG, thank you for doing this. And how are you doing today, my friend?
I'm very well. Very well. Always a pleasure to chat. Obviously, we were set up to speak on a few occasions, but for a number of reasons, we've not been able to. So it's good to be back and engaging this situation of comparing how a narcissistic relationship is analogous to being in a cult using your own experiences. So I'm looking forward to hearing you talking about how it all occurred, and I'll jump in and explaining what we're actually witnessing here so people can understand how the involvement in a cult is similar to that of being in a narcissist relationship and in effect vice versa.
Excellent. And yeah, it has been, I know we've been trying to hook up a couple of times and we've been missing each other, but it's really great to speak to you again, man, because this has been a long time in coming. So I'll just start out the story, man, how it started out. And I want to give a disclaimer. I'm not here to throw my parents under the bus. We're going to talk openly and honestly, and I'm just going to tell you my experience. And I don't claim to be an angel myself. So I've learned, a lot through this experience. When I say that my mother is a narcissist and my dad is kind of an AI artificial intelligence robot, my jury's out on him. I don't know if it's trauma that has made him be who he is or not, but I do know that my mom's a narcissist. And despite a challenging family upbringing, I'm not here to throw my parents under the bus or pass judgment because, I wasn't completely innocent either. So with that out of the way, I'm just going to tell the story. So my dad, when I was around 9 or 10 years old, went down to work one day. We had a normal family. My dad, like I said, was shut down. I describe him as kind of artificial intelligence, very robotic, very conformist, whereas he has a son that's kind of on the opposite spectrum. An artist, always kind of getting into typical teenage rebellion stuff and just maybe a rough kid because of this dynamic that I'm talking about. So my dad and my mother were relatively normal. However, everything changed one day when he went down to work, and like any other day, and he happened to be reading a newspaper. And in the bottom corner of the newspaper, it said, Dianetics, learn how to communicate better. To your audience, we're going to be talking about a cult called Scientology. And for those of you that don't know, the most famous member of it is Tom Cruise. And another thing that people might know about it is the Xenu and alien stories. It's a UFO cult, but it was sold as Dianetics to my dad, which is a way of hiding their bad publicity to then snooker people in and finding out that it's Scientology later. So my dad saw this ad that said, Dianetics, learn how to communicate better. That was his button, what they call it in Scientology. In other words, he had trouble communicating with me and the rest of the family. As I said, he was kind of shut down and robotic. And to him, this triggered him to go down to the local mission that was about 20 minutes from his work. And he got sucked into a whole process, which I don't know if you want to talk about now, HG, or we can just carry on with the story and pick that up later. But
a couple of observations there.
Please.
What you've mentioned. So first of all, you've identified that your mother's a narcissist, and your father, you say the jury is to a sense out on him. Now, it might be that he was a narcissist also. So we've got a situation of when narcissists collide, and it either might have been one that's explosive or a situation of narcissistic cementation, where they actually work together towards a bigger aim.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be doing videos about, I'm going to be doing videos about narcissistic cementation separately, but that might have been what's occurred. Or
yes,
he, your father, like you, is a victim of your mother, and that his behaviors as a consequence, he might be normal, he might be empathic even, but his emotional empathy for you and your brother will have been eroded by her behaviors and the external stressor in terms of the way that she was conducting herself towards him. And it's interesting when you mentioned about the fact that he sees the Dianetics in the newspaper and how that was essentially hiding their bad publicity, because that's just exactly how a narcissist comes along and approaches you, isn't it? Yep. The narcissist doesn't cycle up to you exactly. Like I often give this example. Hello, my name's H.G. Tudor, and I'm a narcissistic psychopath. Would you like me to abuse you to an inch within your life? And how about being my girlfriend? One doesn't do that. And it's about hiding, either consciously or subconsciously, the dark side of our behavior. Exactly. Present something which draws them in. Very beginning, that advertisement was there like a hook hanging in the river, that he didn't realize what was actually behind it, and it was a tempting morsel that drew him in initially. Exactly. So already we have that form of a red flag there that you now know about, but at the time you didn't know because you weren't party to this, and of course your father didn't have a clue what he was getting himself into.
Fantastic already, and we're only 5 minutes into that. That was really interesting. Can I say something real quick on that? Because it could be one or the other. And like I said, HG, I haven't been able to suss it and figure it out as much as deep diving as I've done on my parents' history since I got out trying to work this all out. I do feel more sympathy for my dad because I can't tell if he was simply under her narcissistic abuse and that was your reaction. But I got to tell you, they did double team and work together. They're a complete team. So when I extracted myself, it was like going up against the Vatican or something with, it was like when I'm a little small person, it was really, they double team, they work together.
So when you face that, you can sometimes be facing two narcissists where there is this narcissistic cementation that occurs, or you've got an individual who's a non-narcissist, meaning they're either narcissistic, normal, or an empath, but any of those combinations, they have emotional empathy. But coming back to your AI point, the individual almost leave of their own senses because they are governed to by the narcissist and what the narcissist requires, to the detriment of their own children and the detriment of other family members. And of course, we see prominent example of this at the moment between Harry's wife and Prince Harry, where he has been brainwashed by her, entering into the cult of Harry's wife, whereby she has effectively told him everything you once knew is wrong. And so, and it's the same with entering a cult. What you knew about your family, that's wrong. This is the way forward. You've been blind. You've been misled. This is the way forward. You have enlightenment. And these people that come along with this zealous approach to this, you won't. But whether it's finding religion in terms of Christianity, that you'll get people who suddenly think, I've woken up to the way that the world actually is. I now see the light. I've been educated. I've had this road to Damascus moment. In other instances, it's a more nefarious aspect of being controlled with a cult, that they think, actually, gosh, everything I was doing before, I now realize that I was completely blind, wasn't I? And actually, you're not. You were just getting on with life. But somebody charismatic, and usually a narcissist, has come along and whispered in your ear and said, your family are laughing at you,
Yes.
Are they? Yes, they are. And do you realize that all these things that you thought before, it's not really quite right? Do you know what? The more you tell me these things, the more it makes sense. And that poison's being dripped in your ear. So it might be for your father that he was a victim of that, so that he drunk the Kool-Aid, and therefore he then buddies up with your mother because he can't see any different.
So interesting. And
what we know is that you're an empath. Okay, we know you're an empath, and so we know that probably there's at least one individual that's going to be a narcissist amongst your parents because of what they drew you into. And the answer is stick them through the narc detector to find out what's what. But the scenario, either two narcissists, narcissistic cementation, that they come together, or your father's under the spell of your mother to the detriment of his obligations and duties towards you and your brother.
I think it's a little bit of both. My dad could very well be a narcissist. Again, I don't know if it's trauma coming from the military when he served in the Navy, And
Okay.
Scientology mimics the Navy, so that was also another hook, you know, to get him in there, and it provided the structure that he might have been missing.
Yeah.
And I just
Yeah.
do, when I go just by feeling, which isn't the way to do it, but I definitely have a lot more compassion and sympathy for my dad because of how much he's controlled by my mother. And they have an interesting dynamic where he seems to be subservient. At the same time, he's very frightening and, you know, is terrifying as a Scientologist. And we talked about this before, HG, like, sometimes is it not difficult to tell unless you extract someone from the external stressor like the cult, who the hell my dad might actually be minus the trauma? Or would he just be a full-on narcissist after he was out of Scientology and deprogrammed? You know what I mean?
Yeah. You may be dealing with an individual who isn't one, and then when he's deprogrammed, you can see that. Right. Remember that many behaviors can be created by both narcissists and non-narcissists. It's the driver that's different.
Mm-hmm.
So I dealt with individuals, as we know, narcissists are routinely unfaithful. They cheat. But I've dealt with empathic victims who've cheated. Why? Because the narcissist has come along and has caused them to cheat because of the addiction. The addiction created their emotional thinking, and it creates flawed logic, and it got hold of their narcissistic trait of infidelity, heightened that. They would never have cheated until the narcissist came along. They would never have thought about going elsewhere. But then the narcissist comes along, and that activates that infidelity in them, causes a reduction of their emotional empathy rather for their partner. So they end up cheating with the narcissist. So similarly with your father, it may well be the case that his behaviors would have been fine were it not for the double whammy of the way that your mother was him. And then in a strange way, you've just mentioned about the fact that the Navy provided structure for him and that Scientology formed as a structure. Your mother may well have utilized, and obviously you're going to expand on all into all of this, but it might be that your mother used your father's vulnerability of a lack of structure against him as a means for control, and then coaxed him into Scientology by going, come this way, ushered him along by saying, look, structure, and he was like, oh goody, gimme, and he sleepwalked straight into it.
You know, HG, she was, I'll continue on with the story because I got to give you more information, but it's so interesting what you say, because that's hitting it from a different angle that I hadn't thought about. Now, my mother was like me. We knew that evil entered the family. My dad looked hypnotized. He looked like he had a 1,000-yard stare, like he had complex post-traumatic stress disorder. Again, those that come back from the military, if they're traumatized, they have this certain look, right? Well, he went from my normal dad to having this really strange look, and he was already talking differently. They had already programmed him because he started the courses, and he'd been down there for about 10 hours that day. He skipped going to work. At 8 a.m., he went down to the mission, and he didn't come back till late that night. He came back a totally different person.
He went straight down.
Yeah, he went straight down there, got into the choruses. Now, when he came back, what he said to my mom is, I need to borrow $10,000 from my brother because we didn't have a lot of money at the time to give it to this strange new thing called Scientology. So first of all, my mother's control was definitely threatened at that point. And I think she learned how to use it, just like you said, to then encourage him once she realized this was a do or die situation, HG. My dad either needed to take to Scientology, probably because how much he was getting crushed by my mother, as well as perhaps his own narcissism and needs. Yeah. But it was a matter of, I need to do this or we might have to get a divorce. So he might have been asserting his own control and fighting back a little bit. But my mom
it might be that your father was effectively caught between the jaws of two narcissists.
Exactly.
He's been getting it from your mother. Okay, which makes him susceptible because he's being ground down. Then all of a sudden, another narcissist, Scientology,
exactly,
okay, is waving cooey, and causes him of moments to 1, shirk work, 2, spend all day there, monopolization of time, 3, cause him to leave his senses by then causing him to go back and say, I need $10,000. Now, if you think about it, if somebody came up to you in the street and said, hey, it's not, hey, buddy, lend me a dime, but can you give me $10,000? You'd go, sorry, can't help you. That would be your immediate response to it, because you think, well, irrespective of my financial circumstances, first of all, it might be, I haven't got $10,000 to give you, or even if I have, I don't know you from Adam, so I'm not going to give you. The fact that your father has walked in there and has been compelled to stay, so that hook entered the water and tempted him to pop down to the mission and find out what was going on. And whilst he was there, sweet seductive words have been whispered in his ear, like the love bombing narcissist, to stay, to monopolize his time. And in the space of 8 hours, he's gone from being an individual who probably would have turned around to somebody and saying, $10,000, not a chance, to going, actually, I will comply, I will go and get the money, and off he goes. And he comes back, and so much so, facing your mother, who's a narcissist, to say, I need to get these $10,000.
I appear to have lost sound a little bit. Can you hear me, HG?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. Just the last sentence, if you don't mind repeating it. We went dead for 1 second.
Sure. So your father basically came back saying, I need $10,000, and that was sufficient for him to even say that to your mother, who ordinarily could have been controlling him. It almost gave him that courage to turn around and say. So it was almost like second narcissist got hold of your father and is more powerful because it's compelled him to go back to an existing narcissist. Say, give me $10,000, or I need to get hold of $10,000.
Yeah, and this is what makes it such a mess, and maybe even harder than just the one-on-one relationship, even though with a narcissist, even though the dynamics are the same. Because of the various elements you're talking about, I learned how to go speak to Scientology and open up to them more than I could talk to my own family, because they squeeze themselves in between the entire family. I describe it as a third-party predator coming from out of nowhere and slipping its way into the family and controlling everybody and making them, it's the dominant factor. But the dynamics that play out and the detail, which you just described exactly. So now you've got my dad trying to, assert control, but absolutely he was being controlled by a narcissist. In fact, this mission that I'm talking about had one of the best salesmen who could sell, ice to an Eskimo. I mean, his name was Jim Hamry, and he was an unbelievable registrar and would get you to mortgage your house, So he was definitely caught. And also, I could relate to my dad because he probably wasn't getting what he wanted from my mother. I'm not getting what I want from my family, but they love bomb me. They offer me a new world where I can finally be accepted. And I already had that pre-wound that set me up from the family dynamic to even slide into Scientology anyways, despite resisting it for a long period of time,
Yeah. How old were you, Doug, when this happened, when your dad went there?
I was 9 years old. Would you like me to kind of carry on and give,
please.
Tell you what happened next? So
yeah, absolutely.
This is just so fascinating. HG, I do videos on this. I have a whole series, and as you know, I'm re-uploading everything because my channel got taken down. God damn it! But when people in a couple of weeks, I'll have the series back up, and I go into all detail about all this, and yet in 18 minutes, I've learned so much more about this that I didn't even think about. The complexity of it's fascinating. Okay, so at 9 years old, my dad comes back with that hypnotized, glazed look in his eye, and he says to my mother, I need to borrow $10,000. She freaks out. We all freak out. They were arguing for a couple months over this. I'd be upstairs sleeping. They had never argued like this before, and all I could hear was the word Scientology downstairs. I mean, it was really intense. So long story short, because my dad basically gave my mother an ultimatum, either I'm allowed to do this, borrow the money from the brother, or we might have to get a divorce, he suggested and was manipulated by the cult, the narcissist, Jim Hamry, the registrar, to do what I'm about to describe. He was trained how to manipulate her to get her down there. And what he said, the classic standard line is, how do you know that this is a bunch of crazy shit or it's bullshit? How do you know anything about it? Why don't you go down and check it out for yourself before we might possibly risk a divorce? So all they had to do was get her down there. She went through a process which is called finding your ruin. It's too detailed to discuss now because we'll lose the train of thought. But basically they put you into a room and they break you down. And they get you to offload and open up what you wouldn't even tell your most intimate partner, your deepest, darkest secrets. And they have ways and means of getting that. As you know,
so
as a means of control and putting the hooks in.
Absolutely. And that's a key thing that we do in different ways, is to get hold of a vulnerability, because as you know from my work in Sitting Target, we look for the empathic traits, the class traits, and the special traits. And the special traits are things like, have you been with a narcissist before? Have you got daddy issues? Has one of your parents died? Have you been abused? Things like. So similarly, we want to get into that dark room where your dark secrets are, so we can triangulate you with your problems and vulnerabilities and issues. And obviously during that golden period, we do so by triangulating you in a, oh, that's so terrible for you. Or we might mirror it. Yes. I lost a parent when I was little too, which could be a blatant lie, but it's done for passion and the mirroring to make that victim think that they're being understood. And so where they're breaking that individual down, it's getting their hands on those vulnerabilities that can be utilized, but it's also causing them to lose sight of who they are. And we do that because if you think about, narcissist ensures that you lose friends, you lose family, you stop engaging in the hobbies that you once engaged in, because all of those things are parts of who you are, but they're interferences to the ability to control. So with the method that you've described there of breaking that individual down, it's akin to the way that the narcissist strips you away from anything that could affect our ability to control you.
It's so fascinating that I understand this process 100% what you're talking about now. But we talked about previously in an interview that I lacked an imagination for evil. I can't imagine somebody planning this out, going step by step, taking the time to do the very detailed breakdown and then rebuilding of the person from the ground up. I never knew about a process like this, minus experiencing it. So when I came out, I was I couldn't believe that somebody would do that.
Well, it's a fundamental of control. And it's utilized in lots of different ways, not just the narcissistic dynamic. Take the military, for example. They break down who you are, turn you into a shaven-headed, uniform-wearing dealer of death, in effect, that you lose your identity because you can't be an individual. You have to conform. And that is done sensibly, because the most effective way for a unit to function is that all the parts all have to be pointing in the same direction. And the corporal looks after the squad, and then the sergeant looks after the platoon, and so on and so forth. And all those pieces fit together, done within an organization that, you must present wearing certain clothing for work. The men wear suits. It's changed a little bit these days, but originally it's the men wear suits, the ladies wear a two-piece, that kind of thing. And that you would all and think about being at school. What happens at school? You wear a uniform. What do? You all sit at desks facing in the same direction. You all have to turn up at a particular time. Your individual identity is broken down for the purpose of control. And with the narcissist, it's no different. And with Scientology, it's no different. And of course, that's been done in a scheming, calculated manner as part of bringing people into the organization.
You make such a valid point, because when I woke up out of the cult, the first thing I thought was, why weren't we taught this in school? And then I realized school was basically doing the same process as a cult, getting you to conform, breaking you down, and rebuilding you to be a rat in the maze, basically, and not question for the rest of your life. The only difference between, I would say, the military and something like Scientology is that at least, now I know it changes once you get in. I haven't served, so I'm just speaking on from what I've heard from my buddies that have. But you can originally sign up and then get transferred, and you find yourself, basically kind of lied to as to what you thought you were getting into. But at least up front, you're willingly signing up for it. You know more or less what you're getting involved in. Scientology sells itself as something entirely different than what it is that you're getting involved in. So there's massive lying. But that thing that you talked about the education, man, that's why I talked on the very first interview we did to get this into schools. But how do you get something into schools? It's a narcissistic setup to begin with. It's designed to mold kids.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, what you have to do is you have to get those narcissists to believe that what they're doing is going to be advantageous for them. So if they can come along with a great system that's helping other people, and remember, many narcissists believe that they help people, and they do help people, albeit for their own reasons, the prime aims, rather than it being for any altruism. It's about harnessing people, those decision makers, to be seen as you're the one that has saved all of these people from toxic relationships by being the first in the country to roll out the H.G. Tudor Academy of Understanding Narcissism, etc. That kind of thing, that you play into that decision maker. Of course, there'll be some decision makers who aren't narcissists, and therefore you sell it to them, and it's based upon their emotional empathy of actually truly wanting to help people for the sake of people. It's interesting you just mentioned there about how Scientology lies to you from the very beginning. Precisely what a narcissist is. Because a narcissist doesn't come and say, I'm here to control you, I'm here to suck up your fuel, I'm here to paint a illusion for you and give you everything that you think is wonderful. Scientology is doing exactly the same thing as a narcissist does, lying to you from the very first moment that we interact with you.
Love bombing, and as you say, they have an incredible facade management. Big shiny buildings, self-help. They don't even really sell us spirituality and something too deep at the beginning. Tools for life. You know, John Travolta and Tom Cruise are Scientologists. You too can be a successful actor, businessman. We have multimillionaires. There's the facade. And then behind it, it's just like this evil cult with snakes. And I mean, the adventure that I went on, my friend, until I finally got out in my 30s, was absolutely insane.
If you were to sum up what the facade is, Doug, would you say it's basically you can be successful?
Yeah, I would say that it's the main sell, and what my dad bought into it. Remember, we talked about it. It said Dianetics, learn how to communicate better. It wasn't about, you know, the alien freaky stuff. It wasn't about spirituality. It was like, look, L. Ron Hubbard was a master salesman. To your listeners, that's the founder of the cult. And now it's run by a guy named David Miscavige, who's not nearly as brilliant. But he could market it to everything. So he was everything to everybody. And he knew what buttons to press on in people. He knew what they wanted. Well, one, they want spirituality, a spiritual home, especially if they've been abused. He can grab all the people that have wounds. He knew that people want money and they want to be successful. I wanted to be an actor, man. And in a certain way, it did help, but not based on the downside was far worse. That's a whole nother story. But so what my hook was an actor, and hey, they have communication courses, which teach me to communicate better. My dad had a button on communicating. So that was his hook. He hit every angle in society. That's why they had everything from scientists who you'd think, how the hell can they fall for this? Anyone can fall for mind control once you go under, and an abusive relationship in the right circumstances. And again, if you're an empath, but, you know, we had everything from scientists to artists to very, very successful multi-millionaires. So that's how he sold it. That's all the facade.
Okay. Okay. So it wasn't a sort of facade passion, like we're here to save you. We're here to cure you, but it was essentially saying you can become a more successful, better person.
Right, but a little bit of that, HG, was the cure part was from Dianetics. Okay. That was sold as a science, not a belief system, but an actual science of the mind. Hey, we got the subconscious mind cracked, L. Ron Hubbard said. All the traumas that you've had, and they don't even hit you with the past life stuff yet. They just say, look, all the traumas that you've had, they're stored in your subconscious mind, and these are impacting your ability to make money. Why you're self-defeating. If we can get rid of that, if you can revisit those past traumas and undo them and relieve the charge on the incidents, you will then not keep repeating the same cycle over and over again. Very logical. There's some validity to that. Of course, trauma is stored, blah, blah, blah. He took a Freudian and a bit of a Jungian idea, and because he stole everything from everybody, and used that as the cure part, but mostly it's sold as tools for life, make more money, be better. And the way to do that is to get rid of this reactive mind, i.e. the subconscious mind, and that will also help you to make more money. So it's kind of both. You see what I'm talking about?
Okay, so yeah, absolutely. So we have their character trait acquisition of pinching ideas from other people and passing them on effectively their own.
100%.
And then the facade management of facing the world and saying, well, this is what we're offering you in terms of improving you and becoming more successful.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, did my dad more successful, or what happened after he brought the mind virus known as Scientology back into the family? So after my mom goes down for, they argue for 2 months or whatever, she finally goes down. They put her through the same process, and she basically takes to it. Now, HG, we have had to push my mom up the bridge. That's what they call it in Scientology, their self-help, the bridge to total freedom. It just is ridiculous having to say that out loud, but that's the goal in Scientology. And it's just so ludicrous, right? But anyway, so we had to push her up the bridge constantly. Whereas once I got into it, after they broke me down and my dad was into it, we wanted to shoot up that bridge, and we did. I think my mom was doing it strictly to keep the family together. She was definitely going to lose control if they get a divorce over this. So she would have sussed that it's better for me to hang on to the family and just go along, put on my own facade of being a Scientologist. But as programmed as she is, and she definitely thinks like a Scientologist, she still only, I feel, was doing it to maintain control of the family and to go along with it. Because as I said, it wasn't her thing. It was just me and my dad, and we had to push her ass up. So continuing on. Okay, so what they did once my mom was on board is whenever I'd have problems with a girlfriend in school, whatever, I was a rebellious kid, but nothing too bad. Again, when I got into Scientology, they started to reframe my life as it was really bad. But before that, I was a typical rebellious teenager. The seed of my dad bringing in Scientology amplified all my problems. So I was no longer just a kid who was semi-bad. Scientology, as that milieu and that information went more and more into my mom and my dad's head, they would then apply that to me. And we're designed to reframe everything really, really bad. So my parents, if I was smoking cigarettes or, when I smoked pot or whatever, this was like completely evil, man. Whereas before Scientology came into the family, it wouldn't have been a big of a deal. So what they would do is they would sit me down when I'd have a problem. They would get me to trust in them and offload and be honest. Sometimes I'd go on for a couple hours just saying, yeah, mom, okay, I did this and I did that. And I would be honest with them because they're my parents and I freaking trust them. At the very end of this, and this happened many, many times, they would say, do you want to be punished for a few weeks, or would you like to take a course in Scientology? It's $50, Doug. We'll pay for it. You don't have to worry about anything. We're doing this because we love you, and we know Scientology works. We know it will help you. You need to stop, your out ethics, as they call it in the cult. So I would always tell them to go fuck themselves. I mean, HG, for the first 10, 20, 30, 50 times they pulled this, I'm like, I can't believe you allowed me to open up for 2 fucking hours. And then it was all about taglining it with, now we think a course in Scientology will help. As soon as they got the freaking S word and added the word Scientology, because I got used to this, I fell for this many times, I would just say, fuck you. I would slam the door. When I had a car, I would get in my car and drive off. I mean, this was a major, major issue, them trying to manipulate me into this cult. I said, Dad, it's your thing. Mom, it's your thing. I'm not into this. I think it's fucking stupid. So I knew it was stupid. I didn't know much about it. I knew it was evil. I saw the change that my dad went through. I wanted to have absolutely nothing to do with it, which, by the way, real quick before you jump in, HG, this is why I make a good case study, because people that think that they could never fall for it, I'm the least conformist person there is. I hate groups. So to wake up out in my early 30s and to realize what I've been involved with, that I drank the Kool-Aid, that you're never going to take away the Scientology belief system from me ever, minus the miracle that we'll talk about in part 2 or 3. So yeah, it's just amazing that I would be the last candidate, and yet slice by slice, bit by bit, manipulation by manipulation, this is how they started to do it with the talk that I just described to you. Did you have anything you wanted to say on that process?
Certainly. Well, what's interesting here is that if we maintain the basis that your mother's the narcissist and your father isn't, and we know that you're an empath, that we look at Scientology as obviously within it that it's governing individuals. But if we also see it as an analogy to narcissism in the way that it operates of drawing people in, the fact is that you have an individual who is a narcissist herself, that you might think to yourself, well, hang on a second. This organization is trying to draw her in. Would that not be a threat to her control? And she would reject it.
Right.
Now, to begin with, it was because she was having the arguments with your father. He was coming along and saying, come join our club. And she was going, it was a threat to control, and her base response was argumentativeness. And no doubt there are all various of the manipulations. And then ultimately, her narcissism decided that in order to control your dad, and through that there would be some other benefits, that it would make sense to have some involvement. And so she went along with it.
Exactly.
And then, having gone along to it, she gets sucked into it also, because a more powerful narcissist is, and remember, two narcissists can clash, but they can also come together, as I was talking about earlier on about the narcissistic cementation, but it can in the context of a non-romantic relationship as well, whereby two narcissists can coexist for a period of time where she's getting what she wants. So because she thinks to herself, well, this organization is making me more successful, and these people are pleasant and polite and come on in and welcoming. So they are showing that they are under control to her, therefore her control needs are met. She's receiving fuel from them alongside everybody else.
Right.
She's getting the character traits of being associated with this organization and the herd mentality of human beings of belonging. And she gains also the residual benefit of, I'm going to be more successful and so forth. And then what happens is that her and your dad are lieutenants of Scientology.
Right.
As they attempt to recruit you. So, excuse me, Scientology has drawn your father in straight away. And let's assume he's a non-narcissist. So he's been susceptible to its manipulations. And then as a lieutenant of that organization, he has managed to recruit her in, and her narcissism at first resisted, but then decided this will work. And then as a member of it, and has become indoctrinated into what it does and what it needs, they both then turn to you. Right, Master Kramer, you are now coming in, and as a lieutenant of this narcissistic organ, if you will, seek to recruit you. Now, interestingly, you as an empath have that addiction to narcissists and that susceptibility. But at that early juncture, your emotional thinking wasn't so high to cause you to go, yes, I will obey, I will join Scientology. You saw it for what it was. You thought, this is some evil empire. I'm not having any part of it. So your emotional thinking wasn't strong enough at that early juncture to allow you to be drawn in by these two lieutenants. Hence, you rebelled against it. But of course, as you know, that changed.
And perhaps my own, perhaps my own, like I said, I wasn't an angel, perhaps my own narcissism too. You know, I completely changed when I woke up out of this. And that's when I really had the heart open up and the empathy explode, where I thought, you know, I felt emotions I've never felt before. Because as I said, you know, it wasn't just Scientology, HG. It was, looking back at my life now, this makes so much sense. I am an empath. I can't not be that. That's why I was driven to the arts. That's why I take on my parents' emotion. That's why I actually care. But I didn't realize I was subconsciously trying to defend myself. And I couldn't defend myself against them, because until you get out of the house, I'm subject to having to walk on eggshells and work around what they say. And I didn't know what a narcissist was. I thought I loved my mother. I saw the manipulations, but I excused him, and I thought it was me, me, me. So they beat me down in order to eventually get me into the cult, which then also beat my ass down too. But yeah, I was a tough case, man, because I don't know what it is. We're just born differently or whatever. I can't be like my dad. I can't be like my mom. I could never do the kind of things that they do. You know, they carry on with their life, and I've been, you know, had to cry over the last 8 years or whatever, trying to process all this. I don't know how they can do it, but yeah, that's the thing, man. It's HG. It's almost like out of the gate, I felt like, you know, we can't select our parents. It's the luck of the draw, and you have to, you know, you can't bitch about it. You have to maybe, you know, integrated, or those are the only parents we got. But I didn't have a chance with or without Scientology from the beginning, because I know at least my mother's a manipulative narcissist. And I think that she had my dad under her thumb. So either way, I was going to have to leave the family or get away, because when you're dealing with a narc in the family, as you say, once you know, you go. So I was, and then Scientology just added another layer onto that. I initially was trying to save them and wake them up before I knew anything about narcissists. And then I realized, you know, I not only can't save them, the very people that are supposed to be protecting me the most, the ones that I trust the most and love the most, my religious leader, quote unquote, and my parents, are the people that I have to most get away from and are most dangerous to me. So it's the whole mind fuck, man, just popping out of the womb, meeting these creatures, you know? Friends, HG and I just got cut off with the internet, and he's pressed for time, and we've actually covered quite a bit. So we figured this would be a perfect time to end off. And we're going to do this. It's already super fascinating, my friend. And I think we left it off at a good point where when we pick it up next time, because we covered how I got into Scientology in the background. Now we're going to talk about how I got enmeshed into it and how they actually captured me. And this may turn into several parts, but I hope you guys are as fascinated as I am, because I mean, I've been looking at this for 10 years and I just learned, more in that 30 or 40 minutes than doing a whole fucking channel on it, man. So HG, I really appreciate it. Before we end off, is there anything you'd like to say on that? And then also, can you please tell people where they can avail yourself of your services and what you offer? And I'll be leaving all of that information as usual in the description box on the video on my channel.
Okay. It's hugely interesting and hugely important for people to understand the dynamic that narcissism is, and also people who are interested in understanding the way that a cult is, that the essence of the dynamic are essentially, it's the same thing. And that's what we're wanting you to understand, relaying Doug's experience of being involved in the cult and mine as being an expert on narcissism and somebody that absorbs people into a cult of two, me and them. So those two worlds can come together brilliantly so that you can understand more about both of them and see just how similar they are. Now, in order for you to contact me and to learn more, you can go to my YouTube channel, which is HG Tudor, Knowing the Narcissist is the Ultra, or my blog, Narcsite, narcsite.com. And there you'll find a wealth of material which can help you more about narcissism, and also access my service. You want to talk to me about some of the issues that you have, or want to access various packages of increase your understanding, it's all there. And Doug and I will be back very soon. We're going to tee up our diary shortly to continue this fascinating discussion.
I can't wait, because guys, we barely got started and we did have internet problems. Otherwise, we would have squeezed out another 15 minutes. But HG, I got to tell you, I've never done a consultation, but audience, let this be an example. Because I mean, like I said, he just hit me with a bunch of stuff that clarified a lot of things. And I've been trying to work this out for a long time. So this kind of felt like a session, like what people might experience when they give you a call to try to help you out. Because that was unbelievably
Absolutely
fascinating, man. I absolutely love what you had to say. I can't wait to hear more.
And it'll feel all the more like a consultation when I send you my invoice as well. So
yeah. And by the way, I want to let the audience know, because people have said things about this. I don't know what he does for other people, but he's given me 9 interviews for free. He's given me like 9 or 10 hours of his time. He hasn't charged me a dime. And I just wanted to say, on a personal note, HG, I know you're not doing it to help. I know you do it for your own benefit. But the amount of benefit and healing that I've gotten, as well as the audience and the comments that people leave from the videos that we've done, I can't thank you enough, man. It's been, and it's all been free of charge. Just want to say thank you again for your time, man.
You're most welcome.
Really appreciate it.
You're most welcome. No problem at all. Good.
Okay, my friends. So we'll hit you up on the next one soon, and I can't wait to pick it up again. Hopefully this whet your appetite. Take care, guys.